Good afternoon. You may be wondering what's a goy like me doing in a documentary like this. I've only got 6 minutes with you, so I can tell you, you can go to the Jpost, and there's several articles that will enlighten you on why I'm doing these from a very personal basis. But I just want to take time and talk about the documentary and how it began. It began 5 years ago. And a whole series of films that CBN has done on Israel, starting with Made in Israel, and then The Hope, the story of the birth of Israel, the story of all the founders, starting with Herzl and then ending May 14th, 1948. Then In Our Hands, which was released last year, the story of the Six-Day War, as told from the point of view of the 55th Paratroopers. But this one, To Life, I think is the most significant one, because the intent here is to change the narrative about Israel. 5 years ago, I realized Israel had a PR problem. And the PR problem was the constant drumbeat of suicide bombers and knifing and intifada and struggle in West Bank, and highly inflammatory words like occupation and apartheid. And having been to Israel so many times, I can't count them anymore. I said, what can we do to change the narrative? How can we go directly after the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement and tell the real story of what Israel is doing? And one of those real stories that, frankly, people never hear about is how a tiny nation the size of New Jersey is punching way above their weight class in humanitarian work around the world. So how do we tell that story? How do we have embedded video teams that will give the reality TV to it? The You Are There, where you get to experience not only what the volunteers are going through, but you also get to experience what the recipients are going through. You get to hear from Syrians on the beach in an island in Greece, being absolutely amazed that Israeli volunteers are there trying to help them, and what that does to change their point of view and change their minds. Going into it as a producer, I thought I knew the story I wanted to tell. I've done a lot of humanitarian work, CBN has, primarily for me personally in Asia. One of the things I look for in people that volunteer to do humanitarian work is what's their motivation. And there's a very practical reason for it. I know people that are motivated by guilt or a sense of obligation won't last very long in the field. They'll turn around pretty quickly. So I was trying to find the motivation of the volunteers here. I'd heard Tikkun Olam, I'd heard about repairing the world, and was sort of expecting to hear that coming back from the volunteers. What floored me was it was universal for all of them, that they said, the reason I'm here, the reason I'm volunteering is that Israel is supposed to be a light to the nations. That stunned me. I was expecting Tikkun Olam. I was not expecting we're fulfilling a prophecy made by Isaiah, and you find it in chapter 49, verse 6, where it's the promise, I will make you a light to the nations. Now, to tell you how deep that goes, in one of the segments on Israel Aid, and it's on a beach in an island in Greece, there is a Christian Arab Israeli who's part of the volunteer team. And she says, I'm a minority within a minority, but I'm also an Israeli. And I want to be here because we are making history. Regardless of whether you're secular Jew, regardless whether you're observant Jew, regardless of whether you're an Arab Christian Israeli, Israelis take this very seriously, that they are to be a light to the nations. Now the documentary, instead of me doing it, now the documentary became a mirror for me, and I'm looking at it, I'm wondering, when's the last time I heard an American say, the reason I'm doing humanitarian work is we're supposed to be an example to the world. Years ago in the Massachusetts colony, it was founded to be a city on the hill. The last time I heard an American politician use that phrase, it was Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. And it got me thinking, has America lost one of its driving forces? And one of my hopes with this documentary is the nations who are going to get to see it, and we're releasing it in America, we're releasing it in Canada, UK, Philippines, India, Nigeria, all the major English-speaking nations of the world. I'm working on dubbing it and getting it translated so other nations can see it. What I hope is that mirror will come to them too, and they will wonder, well, if Israel can be an example, in the middle of all the condemnation, all the UN resolutions, Israel still does humanitarian work and does it selflessly, does it in the most remote places of the world. If Israel can do that, that tiny nation, what can we do? And that would fulfill that word from Isaiah, I will make you a light to the nations for the salvation of the world. So be that example, please. I've heard a lot of talk today about the next generation losing sort of sight of the overall role of Israel in the world here on our 70th anniversary. Be that light. And my prayer, my wish, is that you would shine very brightly and be that example to the world. If you want to see the movie, it's tolifethemovie.com. Absolutely free. All you have to do is go online and you can watch the whole thing. Thank you.